I hope it's working. All right. Welcome to hello. Welcome to 3020. Oh, it is 3020. Apparently, sadly, I'll be taking you in 3020. So, yes, well, sadly, right? We should ask the people doing languages, is it English, what that means. But anyway, so I'll be taking you in 3020. It's a year-long course. I'm not sure if Pierre is going to be interested in some aspects of what we're doing. If that's the case, then he's probably going to join us in 1 or 2 modules or something. All right, so there we are. We are in year number 3, 1 more year and we're out of here, right? Just a reminder, if you're not aware that this course has a prerequisite, it's 2010. So ideally what that means is that you should have passed this course for you to proceed and do this course. Otherwise, I don't think that you should be allowed to do this if you failed 2010. Something else I wanted to mention is there's going to be some practical aspects with the assessments, and so if I were you, I would pay particular attention to what's being discussed in 3010. I don't know if you've started this already with Tuesday Warrior. You probably want to pay attention in there. And then also, there's going to be some aspects that are going to be discussed in 3030 with Dr. Akakandelo. I think Pierre is also involved in 3030. So, oh yeah, 2034, right? Yeah, he's coming back. So you want to, yeah, so you want to pay particular attention to those things. And also, I think at some stage there's a slide titled Motivation. I'll explain why this thing is really important, what we're doing right now. Right? It's tied to the capstone project that you're going to do next year. So go figure. So in terms of the activities, we essentially have tentatively about 4 core activities in the course. So traditional lectures or sessions such as this one, they usually 3 hours per week, so meaning 3 sessions in a week. And then what we're thinking of doing is incorporating some aspect of like a seminar series, we'll call it. So the idea is to invite people from industry that have experience developing software to come through and chat to us about what it is they do or what it is they've done in the past, right? I think it'll be really interesting. We already have ideas of potentially people we will most likely invite, so brace yourselves. And then there's supposed to be 2 hours of tutorials every week as well, right? And then the last activity is obviously assessments, and they're split up into, so what, this is crossed out because the idea was to allocate marks to attendance of seminars and participation. So if you're asking questions, then you get marks, right? If you're not, then obviously you don't get any marks. But I'm not sure if this will work. Attendance though is going to be mandatory. Whether you like it or not, you should attend. There'll be an attendance register. There will be a group-based project where you get to work on a software development project, right? So the idea is for you to develop software. So you go through the entire software development life cycle. And the way we've actually structured the assessment is in such a way that we have milestones and deliverables associated with this assessment, right? So for instance, there will be an assignment or an assessment on writing of like the project report, for instance, presentation of the project proposal, right? And then obviously we'll have class theory tests, and then finally the exam. The split is 50-50, as is the case with most courses. So 50% allocated to the continuous assessment, and then 50% to the final exam. I'll explain more about the split, especially a split of scores for the group-based project. There's a grading slide. In terms of the so-called prescribed textbooks, as is the case with most of the courses I've been involved with, at the end of each lecture presentation, you'll find a bibliography slide with links to resources that are freely available. But if you're obsessed with books, most of what we're doing is going to be heavily tied to this book. by Ian Somerville, right? Software engineering. It's a classic, actually. I think it was first written somewhere in the 80s, so it's been around for quite some time, and the latest edition is the 10th edition. And then there's some aspect of the mythical man month that we are probably going to use, and especially once we start discussing team dynamics, right? So here's another book. And then when we get to the stage where we start discussing evaluation and experimentation of software artifacts, we shall use a lot of things that you find in experimentation or in software engineering, right? Really nice book. And then in terms of software tools, so the way the course is structured is in almost each and every theme that we cover, there's some aspect of like tooling that is involved, right? And what that means is we need to familiarize ourselves with certain tool sets or software tools. I will be using Project Libre, Git for version control, and Dia for creating these UML models, for instance, right? You're free to use whatever tool you feel comfortable using. At this stage, I think you shouldn't really struggle when it comes to using or installing and configuring software applications, right? We are mostly going to use Project Libre once we start discussing project management, I think, which is tomorrow. And then we'll use Git once we start our discussion of team communication, right? So the idea behind this is, I mean, when you're developing software as a group, how exactly do you reconcile the different versions that are coming from different project team members, right? So version control using Git. If you want, we can have a discussion on alternatives to Git. There's Mercurial, for instance, but it really doesn't matter. It's just a piece of software. It's just like Microsoft Word is the same as LibreOffice Writer, right? It does one and the same thing. Yeah, Dia for creating these the UML models or diagrams I spoke about. So things like use case diagrams, class diagrams. Really versatile tool. I've used it for quite some time. It's freely available, and I think it's open source as well, so that's a plus for us. But again, you're free to Google up whatever tool you feel comfortable using. I know in the past I've used a tool called Y-Ed. The beauty with Y-Ed is it's a web-based application, right? So you get to use the software once you're connected to the internet, obviously. Unlike this is a desktop-based application. Doesn't matter though. All right. And then in terms of course resources, I'm sure you've heard, I don't know if you've been told, there's this new policy now. Everything, well, at least course administration is supposed to be done exclusively using the Moodle. So what that means is everything that we do, especially when it comes to submission of assessments, will be done using the Moodle. So you want to make sure that you're already a part of the ICT 3020 site. Last time I checked, there were only 44 people there. And if my memory serves me right, we had somewhere around 98 people in first year. I know some people have dropped off, but I expect more than 44 people, right? The sooner you're a part of this thing, the better, because I think one of the very first assessments is going to be team composition. So you're going to go out there and then choose whom you want to work with. Insofar as a group project is concerned, its idea is supposed to be groups of 3 to 5. I think we'll go with 3, right? There'll be predefined problems that you're going to work on, right? So your task is just essentially going to be coming up, we are developing a proposal around the problem set that you're going to prefer to work on, you alongside your team members, right? So Moodle, I don't know, I mean, for now though, I mean, the lecture presentations are also going to be freely available or publicly available online, right? So if you're interested, just go here. You should be able to access them, just like first year, I guess. So it's course web page, right? Have you started 3010? Oh, okay. You should be able to find, I think, most of the tools that I just spoke about, these things here. I know Dia is there, Project Libre and Git, they're all available. They're all available on the DC Hub, so feel free to download them if you want to. Or if you want, you can get them from the internet. Who cares, right? I don't know if we'll have a situation where we start working with other software applications that we might want to expose to you, but if that's the case, they'll either be available here or on the DC Hub as well. Right, so in terms of course grading, like I said, it's a 50-50 split where 50% goes towards the exam and then the remaining 50 goes towards the continuous assessment. 20% is going to be allocated towards class theory tests. We shall have a total of 2 class theory tests. What that means is 10% allocated to each, and ideally 1 theory test each term. So we shall have 1 class test this term and another class test next term. But we're allocating a lot of marks to the group project just because there's a lot that's involved here, right? So 30% goes there. And like I said, not 5, I think 3 is better than 5. 3 is good. So it would be 3 individuals per group. I'm sure you know each other by now. There's nothing like, I was tempted, right? I sat there and I'm thinking maybe you should pre-allocate individuals to groups, but no. You know each other by now. This is 3rd year, so just approach people that you think you might want to be your team members or project team members, and then form a group. At a later stage, hopefully before the end of next week, a list of problems that you're going to solve are going to be made available. Your task is going to be to choose which problem you and your team members are going to want to solve. It's going to be first come, first serve, so the sooner you select the project that you want, the better. There'll be different projects, so there's nothing like solving the same project, cheating, right? Yep, yeah, it has nothing to do with what you did at first year though. I mean, it's one way of making sure that people are, anyway. So the brief, ideally, a brief write-up of the problem specification is going to be made available. So the task is to try and see if you can understand the problem, and then we shall then start going through a series of baby steps where we develop a proposal, we do presentations, we come up with requirements, specification documents, requirements analysis documents, come up with various modeling diagrams, behavioral interaction diagrams and whatnot. But all of those are going to be associated with different types of assessments, right? And I'll show you just now, there are marks allocated to the different components. Ideally, you can view the assignments as being milestones or deliverables associated with the project that you're going to be working on. All right, and then towards the end of, well, after we're done next term, we shall write the final exam. I don't think this is a very difficult course, in my opinion, I think, so go figure. So the split of the assessments is going to be as follows, right? You notice that there are, I guess, phases associated with the group project itself. So we have, it's supposed to be requirements analysis component. Sorry, this is supposed to be analysis. It's essentially just planning, right? Project planning, and then requirements and design, implementation, documentation, and then there's going to be an aspect of peer grading. I have some experience with working with people here when it comes to group projects, right? 4th years. And as with most things in life, some people are lazy, right? They'll take advantage of the fact that it's a group-based project. I can just stay away and I'll get the marks. No, right? There's going to be an aspect of peer grading. And if your colleagues tell me anonymously to say, you did not participate in the project, we're going to deduct more marks from you, right? So the idea is everyone is supposed to participate, right? In an ideal case, it's supposed to be like equal participation, but that's usually not the case. It's probably going to be a person who's good at programming, right? So maybe he's the one who's going to do most of the work. Maybe there's a person who's going to be good at, or is good at documentation, so they're going to do most of the work. But hey, that's besides the point. You get to decide exactly how you're going to undertake the project. But as we go through the different topics, we get to discuss certain things that are going to be helpful, especially when it comes to team dynamics, right? Right, so hopefully this totals up to 30, I think it should. So ideally, the planning phase is going to be split up into proposal, like development of a proposal document and a presentation, right? So you have 2 marks allocated to 2% actually. I don't know if people are confused with mark allocation. You probably think 2 marks. This is like equivalent of 2 quizzes if you still remember first year. So it's like 4 quizzes. So that should give you an idea of how valuable these scores are going to be, right? Specifics of how to develop the proposal document are going to be outlined to you. In fact, we have one of the very first lecture series we have is going to look at communication and writing, right? So we get to learn a thing. I guess it's revision from 2034. I don't know if we were taught how to develop proposals. It's the same. It's just that the only difference is this proposal is more technical, right? Yeah. And then there will be a presentation, group presentation. You stand in front like Lighton does, and then you tell us what you're doing, right? Very soon. 10 minutes usually. And what normally happens is there's nothing like, we'll select a person who's good at communication, right? The language is mine, and no. Everybody participates, so you get to decide who's going to cover which topic of which part of the presentation. You get my point, right? So you split up the 10 minutes accordingly amongst the 3 of you. But you've done a lot of proposal presentations, I'm guessing, by now. So this is like, it's become second nature, right? Okay. And then the next phase or the next activity is requirements and design. And really we split up requirements elicitation or requirements analysis and specification. We've combined it together with system design. Ideally, they're 2 separate entities. So what happens here is you develop, again, this would be specified in the assessments, you develop a whole range of artifacts. So it could be use case diagrams, class diagrams, what else is there? Activity diagrams, state diagrams, and all those funny things. And then those will be the deliverables, right? A document composed of those things. The system design would incorporate things like an architectural design of whatever system you're going to choose to develop, right? See here, I mean, what that means is, hope you still remember 2010. If you don't, revision time, right? The assumption we're making is you know how to write software, or you know how to program, right? What we are learning here is the process you have to go through for you to develop software, right? Turns out there's a difference between programming and software development, right? So we are studying software development, essentially. It's the end-to-end aspect. So the split is, this is not 5, this is 4-4. I redistributed some of the marks here always before. So this is 4 goes to the requirements analysis, and then 4 is going to be allocated to the system design. It might just be the case that actually that the deliverable here is going to be a single document that incorporates these 2 aspects. But you realize that there are a number of things involved here, right? For instance, the artifacts that you're going to incorporate the requirements analysis and design part, probably going to be a whole range of them, right? So, and then there's going to be implementation where you actually write a piece of software, right? Fully functional software. And it's split up into 4 core parts. I don't know if we're going to have to split it up further, but essentially there are going to be marks allocated to the source code that you are going to submit, right? So once you write your software, obviously, towards the end or at some point before the deadline, you submit the source code. And then there will be a series of deliverables associated to prototypes, right? So we expect you to produce a paper prototype, I guess an initial prototype that is going to be some sort of a feasibility demonstration of sorts, and then the final version of the software, right? And you understand what I'm talking about here once we look at the different software development models that are out there, right? You notice that in certain instances, you actually go through a loop where you, more like if you're leveraging rapid application prototyping, for instance, you develop the software in iterations, or if you're using Agile, right? And then obviously, you've been taught how to write comments and how to document software. Hopefully, you'll be expected to produce documentation associated with a piece of software. Just like Microsoft Word comes with a manual, you shall produce a manual as well. This is easy, right? It's just typing, so 1 mark or 1%. And then towards the end, you shall demo to us and to everybody else how your software works, right? That would be like, that would be at some point next term, not this term. And so the demonstration obviously is allocated. Is there a problem with the demo? Is there a problem with the demo? But you have a year, right? A year and then it's 3 people and then it's not like it's complex piece of software you're going to be writing. Very trivial things or problem you're going to be solving. No, serious. And in fact, you realize that it's trivial once you get to, in fact, once you're done with term 1 in 3010, you realize how trivial, because some of you are probably going to settle for web-based applications. Some of you will probably settle for desktop-based applications. We want a variety, right? We want some of you to develop mobile apps, which is quite nice. Okay, so you shall demo this. And I know it's usually the case that some people are going to do a really nice job, right? So if you develop some really nice mobile app, we'll put it up on the Play Store or something, right? And claim that it was a part of, not claim it, be part of 3020 or something. And then the final set of deliverables is documentation. It's tagged as documentation, different from this type of documentation. So at the end, you shall write a report, comprehensive report that has so many different parts to it, right? Everything that we would have discussed. So the problem you were solving, research questions that you were attempting to solve. And I should mention here that in fact the way we've structured this group project is it's a research project. So in an ideal case, if you're developing software in industry, you don't really worry so much about, oh, what research question are you trying to solve, right? But we want to do that, right? And so these are things that are going to be in the final report. Aspects of the system design, you know, the architectural design of your system, you know, how the different components interact with each other, how you went about correcting the requirements, and the evaluation that you did, right? To ascertain the fact that the software does indeed meet the requirements, the needs of the person who approached you to develop the piece of software, right? And you understand all of this because we have dedicated sessions or lecture sessions towards evaluation and experimentation in software engineering, right? And then finally, like I said, decided to allocate 2 marks to prevent people from lazing around, right? So everybody is expected to participate in this, right? If you don't, you get to lose some marks here. Right. I mean, second nature, obviously, you know about this already. It's breakdown of the marks. Doesn't change, specific to School of Education, right? This is back, right? If at this point, I really don't expect you to, I think we've matured from the time we messed up in first year. Hopefully, right? If I were you, right? You know, this is interesting. Which course is that? It turns out that even when you're working with other people in a group project, there's some people that might do things that are a bit untoward, right? And so you want to make sure that you're on the lookout and that people don't do things that are classified as academic dishonest. Do you understand what I mean? Because the assumption we'll make once you're caught is that everybody was a part of this, right? So everyone is going to be affected. Which is why we've dedicated time to look at project management and, you know, how we go about working in groups and things of that nature, right? So there's going to be an automatic 0 mark if you're caught cheating or plagiarizing. You don't want to do this. I'm trying to see if there's a way of cheating here, especially in the group project. Actually, in the group project, right, it would be difficult for you to cheat, I assure you, because the problems, maybe I don't think you'll be able to find the problems online or anywhere. So I'm trying to see how possible it is for people to cheat, maybe. But in the test, you know, here you want to avoid this, right? I'm guessing people might be tempted cheat here. But anyway. So like I said, exclusive administration and management of the course is going to be exclusively done using the Moodle, right? And also, we are going to continue using our course mailing list, right? Important information is going to be circulated using the course mailing list. So you want to make sure you're already a part of this. I think almost all of us are already a part of this. I've noticed some people have responded to some of the emails that I've sent using this mailing list. So my assumption is that people have access to this. Everybody in here has access to this mailing list. What's the problem? Why don't you have access to this mailing list? In third year and we don't know how to use email, right? Okay. Well, I mean, if you don't know how to use this, you better get in touch with people that know how to use this. I'm sure they're in here. If you need to get through to me or get in touch with me, that's my email address. Also, I've maintained my office hours. If you want to physically come and see me about anything to do with the course, I'm available between 9 and 13 every Friday, right? So come through. If you want to see me outside of the slot, schedule an interaction with me and tell me when you want us to meet after checking free slots on my calendar, right? Ideally, there's supposed to be 2 tutors assigned to the course. They have not yet been assigned. I'm not sure when exactly they're going to be assigned. I don't handle tutors myself, as you already know. I know Clement and Whoopi went through a bit of hell when they were following up the tutor thing. So I guess you know what to do by now, right? And then we're going to be meeting every Tuesdays during this slot. I think we should, this venue is too small, I guess. We might shift this to a different location, but we should find replacements. But ideally, for now, we're supposed to be meeting right here in 3C between 12 and 13 on Tuesdays and between 15 and 16 on Wednesdays, which is tomorrow. And then there was a missing slot. Lo and behold, I found an open slot somewhere in the library auditorium. So we shall be having class between 5, I've said 5 and 19 because we plan to schedule the seminars during this slot. So nominally, our lecture sessions are going to be between 5 and 6 on Fridays, the third slot. 17 and 18. But we shall be extending this depending on whether we have like an invited speaker or a seminar or something.
Yeah,
yes?
That's a bit of a challenge.
Okay.
Yeah, you talked of attendance and you said it will be marks.
Yes, for the seminars.
Some of us were with clashes. So
at 17?
Even today we're clashing at 17. So we're talking about friends like in the other class with geography.
Besides the geography, mine as well has a clash. Which mine is that? At 17? Okay. Okay, for the clashes, we'll sort out the clashes. Duly noted. No, we'll do this the right way, sorry. Okay, we'll discuss the clashes and everything. Not Friday as well? Yes. At 17? Yes. Well, 18 to 19 then. Now, is there a clash between 18 and 19? Yeah, so 18 and 19. Listen, we're trying to take advantage of slots where I am available and everybody else in here is available and a venue is already available, right? If you're telling me that there's a clash here, there's a clash here, you want us to find an alternative to this, where are we going to find it? Oh, Saturday then, if you want. No, the way it works is I will send you open slots. That's the best approach. And then the different minors will tell us whether or not they're available. I don't want to go through a process of going through timetables for different minors. Right? It's better if you just look at one timetable which is going to come from me. Yes, there's a question. In fact, we are doing the Q&A session. Are there any questions with regards to what we've discussed so far? The course in general and the timetable. No questions?
Just with the tutors, what if we want to have, what are the challenges with tutors?
No, I don't think there'll be challenges. I don't expect there to be challenges.
So this year,
I don't hire the tutors, right? I'm not sure if this year will be perfect. I hope, we should pray that this year should be perfect, but we'll find a workaround if this doesn't work out. I mean, we'll try and see if we can make ourselves available, that is me, But the thing with making myself available is, as we are waiting for the tutors, and we will not split ourselves into groups. It'll be like another lecture session, I suppose, but we'll tag it as a tutorial session as we're waiting for the tutors to be. Okay. Are there no questions? Yeah.
Can you go back to the timetable?
Okay.
On Wednesdays, what time?
On Wednesdays, it's 15 to 16. So, yeah. No, yes, Abraham.
Yes, I have a question on the assessment part.
Okay.
Yes, sir. After this, it's not a matter of going back.
Okay. Yes, ask.
Very much. You say there is a research involved. So I wanted to find out if maybe the research is costly.
No. The only aspect that's going to involve you moving up and down is once you start going through the requirements elicitation phase, right? Collecting the requirements. And you notice after our discussion of the different techniques that you can use that you don't have to physically visit people in certain instances. Your collection of requirements can be as easy as just using a questionnaire, for instance, or actually scoping your problem in such a way that you interact with people that are right here at UNZA. So UNZA would be like a study site. So no, it will not be costly. There's nothing like printing out anything because you submit electronic copies of documents, right? It will be costly on time, though. If you view time as a resource, it will be costly when it comes to time.
So is there anything like project allowance?
I don't know. I'm not part of the bursaries committee. I don't know. Yeah. There's a question. Yes, okay.
I've seen this course requires a lot of research.
No, it doesn't require a lot of research. The only reason, so here's the thing, right? The motivation behind why we've carved it this way is, and it's coming just now, the motivation is next year. The motivation is coming from next year. This is why we decided to structure the course in this way. It's like, I guess, a small scale version of what you're going to do in 4014. So we're trying to expose you to what you're going to have to go through once you do 4014. This is heavily research based, right? So instead of you jumping right through to 4014 from scratch, we thought, hey, why not combine aspects of 2034 and some of the things we're going to discuss in this course to give you an idea of what to expect in 4014. That's a major motivation for me as well, actually. So it's not going to involve a lot of research, except when it comes to evaluation, I guess. And developing your proposal, right? Support. Oh, and the report. So the report is going to be a smaller version of the report that you produce in 4014 is ideally approximately around 50 pages in length, right? The report that you're going to produce in here is probably going to be maximum of 10 pages. The proposal document approximate size is about 20 pages when you do a capstone project, but in here it's just going to be like maybe 5 pages at the most, right? The software that you develop in 4014, if you work on a project that is heavily aligned towards software development or that requires you to develop some sort of artifact, is so the tools that you're going to develop in here are small versions or smaller versions of what you're going to develop in 4014. In 4014, it's like serious software, right? In here, it's stuff that you can do in a week, actually. I assure you, you see the problems, right? It's within a week you can finish the thing. Especially when it's 3 people, actually, even less than a week. Yes?
This course is more theoretical or practical?
It's a combination of both. So so the practical aspects come in when we start developing these artifacts, right? So when we cover project management, for instance, we go through a process of, well, we look at certain ways of planning and scheduling activities, things like Gantt charts and work breakdown structures, right? So we have to practice a little there, right? I think we've done this. You've come up with Gantt chart before, right? In 1020, I know. Microsoft, is it Microsoft Project or something? I don't know if Dr. Kandula introduced us to these things as well when we were doing 2034. It's the same thing, you're planning this project, it's a research-based project. The only difference, if you worked on a research project in 2034, the only difference is, in this part, we're injecting the artifact, the software too. I don't think you developed any piece of software in 2034. So it's a combination of theory and a bit of practice, I guess. There's some practical component to this. We'll learn how to use Git or Mercurial, right? We shall learn how to design use case diagrams, right? Those sticky figures. So it's going to be fun. Is that fine?
If I didn't get you right, how many months is the CA?
50.
So, sir, my concern is on the allowances. Listen, so are you telling me that you are going to graduate, even on the 4th year? There will be nothing because
I don't know. I have no idea how the bursaries committee works. I don't know if they're still called the bursaries committee. But when I was a student myself, we were given project allowance under the assumption that yeah, but that's only applicable. It's applicable to the capstone project, the 4th year project, the 4014. Yeah. Yes, Ms. Wanza. Sorry? Oh, it will be made available. It should be available. The course outline should be available. Ooh. I don't know where it is here. The course outline is, the course web page has a course outline. Together with these slides, it will be made available there, together with the syllabus, the course outline. So it has a more in-depth, I think what she's asking here is just... So this thing will be made available to you. I didn't print them out. I only print them out at first year. So this will be on the course web page and on the Moodle as well. I guess it's an expanded version of what we're talking about here. It's probably a few details that probably missed out in the presentation. But are there any other questions? Okay, so if there are no other questions, then I guess just a brief intro to the course now. But before we do that, I would like those of you that are interested in becoming course representatives, right? Please send me your details, and then we shall set up a poll where people will vote for 2 people. This process has to be transparent, right? No. Sorry? No, I would prefer it if it's 2 people. I would prefer it if male and female. I would prefer it if it was transparent. Voting will be anonymous. Please vote. So if Hawkins is interested, send me an email. Whoever else is interested, send me an email. Sorry? Okay, thanks. All right, so guys, so in terms of the course itself, I mean, what we're working towards essentially in this course is as follows, right? The learning outcomes are here, and I copy pasted these things. We'll go slightly beyond time here. It's lunchtime. We came late, right? The learning outcomes, right? Copy pasted them from the official document, the program document for this program itself. And so apparently, right? After we're done with this course, we should be able to plan a reasonable. I think this is wrong. It's not supposed to be a programming project, but rather a software development project, right? Using the various software engineering tools that we're going to discuss here and techniques. And then also we should be able to design programs, right? Using different methods that we've discussed. So depending on the sheer size of the project that you find yourself working on, you'll be able to, and the time frame within which you need to work on the project, you should be able to know which methodology you should use. Is it the traditional software development life cycle, the waterfall model, for instance? Are you going to use some sort of agile technique, for instance? Are you going to use Scrum, right? So we'll discuss all these things. And then you should be able to understand and be able to use the various notation techniques. So I mentioned use case diagrams, class diagrams, state machines, activity diagrams, all those fancy things, you should be able to come up with those artifacts, right? As you are designing whatever piece of software you'll be working on. And then you should be able to document the requirements, right? You realize that when you're developing software, you just don't wake up and say you're going to start writing a program and go through a process, right? You first of all collect the requirements so that you understand the needs of the potential users of the piece of software you're developing, right? So we shall understand exactly how to document these requirements, non-functional requirements and functional requirements, right? And then we should be able to, it's not develop, maybe plan a software development project using project management tools, right? So you, so for the group project, after we introduce the theory, you should be able to come up with a schedule and a plan to say between February and is it October or September, these are the different activities we're going to do, and these are the milestones and deliverables, right? So you come up with a plan, formal plan that people are able to understand. And then also demonstrate an understanding of the different issues associated with project management. So cost, schedules, activities, milestones and deliverables, tasks, right? Already mentioned the motivation here. We're setting the stage for what's happening in 2014, which is next year. And again, what you're going to do in 2014 is going to be slightly complex because by then you'll have been introduced to so many different things, right? Software engineering techniques, which is what we're discussing in this course. Java, which is what you did, or specific programming languages like Java, which is what you did in 2010. I'm told, I don't know if this is true, but the person taking you in 2010 is going to introduce you to PHP, right? He's also going to introduce you to JavaScript, HTML, right? CSS, SQL. So you notice that by the time you're getting to 2014, you'll be in a better position to develop full-fledged software, useful software, right? Right, so a reminder really that when we make reference to software engineering, essentially what we're referring to is the study of the software development process, right? So ideally, we are going to go through these steps here, with the exception of implementation. We are making the assumption, there's a reason why 2010 is a prerequisite. We're making the assumption that you're already familiar with the implementation phase, which is heavily associated with programming, right, in the actual piece of software. Right, so requirements analysis, design, testing, maintenance, right, and a bit of evaluation, which is here as well. Again, just to highlight or reiterate the fact that there's a difference between software development and programming, right? When it comes to programming, you're looking at just a specific aspect of the project, right? Small little part of the project. But software development essentially involves the end-to-end activities that you undertake. So if you're developing a database-driven application, it would involve you designing the database, right? Which is what some of you are going to do because, again, we're assuming that you'd have done this in 2010, right? Some of you are going to work on, or are going to develop web apps because we're assuming you're going to do this in 2010, right? Anyway, so in terms of the high-level themes that we're going to look at, we're going to set the stage tomorrow by looking at fundamentals of project management, right? Planning and managing a software development project. Essentially, we're just going to look at things like how to identify key activities, milestones, deliverables, and how you schedule the activities, right? It turns out that when you're developing software, the mistake that people normally make is underestimation of the cost and time that it would take. So you look at the problem that's going to be given to you and you think, oh, the three of us, if you choose people that are all good at programming, we can do this in 1 month, right? You'll be surprised how complex this can be, right? So we will learn exactly how to develop something like this, use a Gantt chart, right? For a project that spans multiple months or weeks, right? So how do you identify the key phases, the key activities, the tasks associated with the different activities, the milestones and the deliverables, right? And the reason, by the way, why this has to be formalized is the idea behind what we are doing is that if you're developing complex software, it's rarely the case that you participate in the requirements elicitation, the modeling, and the design, right? The different people that are involved. And so what you want is a sort of situation where a person who develops the use case models and the class diagrams is able to give, you know, that output to the person who's doing the implementation, and the program will be able to understand those artifacts, right? So by looking at the class diagrams and the activity diagrams and the use case diagrams, the program will be able to convert all those different notations into actual software, right? Code, source code. And then the next thing we're going to discuss is, this is being tagged as professional practice, but we want to understand exactly how we go about developing a research proposal, how we communicate, right? It's simple stuff, right? Presentations and how to work as a pack, right? How do you communicate as a group, especially that someone might be off campus, someone is on campus, you know, how do you distribute tasks? What sort of tools can you use, right? Do you all work on one task or one activity, or do you spread them out, right? I don't know. We'll discover what is the most effective way of doing things. And then we will then discuss some popular software development models, right? So that we understand which sort of models we would want to use for our projects, or when we embark on the capstone project next year, which is 2014. And then we'll go through a series of lectures where we get to discuss the requirement analysis and specification, right? There's a number of things that we get to discuss here. Most of them are trivial because they've already been introduced to you. It turns out that when you are collecting requirements, you use the same techniques that were introduced to us by Dr. Kandelwa. Observations, archival records analysis, interviews. What else did he introduce to us? Questionnaires, right? All those fancy things, these are essentially the things we're going to be discussing. It turns out that you use the same techniques, right? And then we start discussing the different UML models. We're not going to discuss all the different UML models that are available out there. We'll focus our attention to these three subcategories, and then we'll just pick and choose a few from structure diagrams, behavioral diagrams, and interaction diagrams. And then we will discover how exactly we go about designing such diagrams, right, which is architectural designs of software, right, so that when you give this to a programmer or a DevOps, they know exactly how the different moving parts are supposed to interact with each other. And then finally, we go through a process of trying to understand exactly how we verify and validate software, right? You just don't develop software, you need to test it to see if it works. Right? We look at a number of testing techniques. And then finally, the reason we've decided to put this in here is because it turns out that it forms a very core part of what you do in 2014. Right? So we have a number of dedicated lecture series to do with evaluation and experimentation of software. So how do you evaluate software? Forget about testing, right? How do you evaluate software? What sort of experimental design techniques do you go about employing after you're done developing the software, please? Is it already time? Where are you going? Is it geography or maths? Good luck, right? Okay, so finally, right, as closing remarks, the guest lectures are compulsory. Everybody is expected to attend these sessions. Lecture attendance will be taken. And a reminder that when it comes to the 30 marks allocated to the group project, it's highly dependent on how you work as a group. If you notice someone is lazing around, you must speak to them and tell them to contribute equally or something. Make sure you distribute the tasks evenly or something. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, I'll see you tomorrow then at 15 hours. Thanks.